Good morning. This is Kathy from the Boston Zobrio office. We are here today to present W-2 year-end seminar. And our goal here with this seminar is to discuss things users can do prior to our December 31st W-2 preparation. Okay. We are joined by a group of people today. What we are looking to do basically is have me present. When we get to the end, we'll have some open time for questions. There is a dialog box that will allow you to enter questions, and at the end of the seminar, or webinar, excuse me, we can go ahead and answer as many questions as necessary. Okay. Now, again, I am Kathy. I work out of the Boston office, and what we want to do is discuss what we can do to prepare for W-2s. And the first suggestion that I would like to make is running reports. To go ahead and run a report out of Fundware, which will provide numbers that you can balance your W-2s against. Now, this report that we recommend is the Employee History by Period report. And what you want to do is put a reporting date of 12/31/2014 and go ahead and run that with a value of A in the period specifier, which basically means you're going to produce a report of data from January through December or to date. You certainly could run that report today and it would pick up everything to date. And there's no problems whatsoever to run this process prior to getting your last payroll for the calendar year processed. Matter of fact, we really recommend you do, so you can kind of go in and audit what's happened between January through currently November. It's fine to sort the report. Recommend do not use the employee selector, however, because you do want to get a report of all employees. Now, what the idea is when you run this report, initially the detail, each individual employee, we're really not going to look at that initially. What we want to do is scroll down to the bottom of the report and get to the totals page. Okay. Now, what the totals do is they reflect the activity payroll-wide for all the employees. And what you want to keep in mind with this particular report is it is reflecting totals that are in the system to date. If you are any one of the clients on the line that have stipends, which are the state-issued stipends, where you go in and you update your system and basically you're adjusting your FICAs and your e-FICAs and FICA Med wages, you want to just be aware of that, is you need to get those adjustments into the system prior to the end of the fiscal year, the end of the calendar year, and that can either reflect before or after you run the report, but just be aware of those totals. If you put in the adjustments prior, they're going to be on the report. If you wait and put them in after you run the report, obviously the numbers are not going to reflect those stipends. Okay. Now, what you do with this report basically is, again, totals page, is you want to proof the numbers. And you're going to see a host of entries here that talk about your different data items in the payroll. For instance, you have federal tax. It's identified as .FWT on the report, and you have an amount column that represents what's been withheld, and then you have a basis amount that reflects the taxable or the taxable wages, which is referred to as the basis amount on this report. And what you're going to be looking at is proofing the federal, your FICAs, your FICA Meds, your state taxes. You want to make sure that those numbers that appear on the W-2 in the various boxes are indeed accurate. So the question is, how do you do that? Well, the first thing that I would recommend is this, is you go down through the report and identify all your earnings items, and in particular, your taxable earnings items. And what you want to do is grab your calculator and add them all up. And what it's going to do is give you a total. And that total will reflect the gross payroll. Hold that total off to the side. And then the next step that you want to do is focus in on the deferrals. And what these are is they're accumulators in the system, and they're referred to as, you'll see codes such as tax defer, FWT defer, SWT defer, FICA defer, and perhaps IMRF deferred, or any other unique deferral accumulators. And I'm going to take the tax deferred to give you an example of what we recommend. Is, well, first of all, tax defer accumulates, or is a grand total of all your voluntary deductions that are pre-tax federal and state. And what you do is, if you go down through the report and you identify all your voluntary deductions that are pre-tax federal and state, add those up individually, and they should come as a grand total, should be equal to the value that you see on this report under the category called tax defer. Now, likewise, the FICA defer is an accumulation of all your individual voluntary deductions that are pre-tax FICA. And FICA encompasses the FICA Med, the E-FICA, and the E-FICA Med. And again, what we're looking to do is proof the total under these data items on the report, under the amount column. Okay. If you happen to see FWT defer on your report, what that's referring to is just those voluntary deductions that are pre-tax federal. If you see an SWT, that refers deferred, that refers to all voluntary deductions that are pre-tax state only. And again, individual deductions will accumulate when you add them together, and they will equal these grand totals that you see on the report. Once you get these totals, what the idea is you now take from your original calculation, which was your gross pay, you want to take your gross pay less these deductions, and the accumulated ones, the tax deferred, and that becomes what we refer to as the basis amount on the report. Okay, so for instance, when you talk about looking at your basis amount for federal tax, what we're looking at here is taking the gross pay that you accumulated less the tax defer, and then quite possibly any FWT or just individual federal defers, and that will give you your basis amount. Okay, that is what we'll print on the W-2, of course, for each individual employee, which is their federal basis wages that we compute the actual federal withholdings on. Okay, so that is the starting point to proof those accumulators, to make sure you're comfortable with the basis amounts and that they indeed accumulate up to the sum of the individual deductions. Okay. Now, from here, what you might question is things like, well, I think, but I'm not sure. Is this deduction pre-tax? Pre-tax what? Well, you can get an absolute report out of the system that will indicate a couple of things. The payroll, first of all, it's the payroll history or historical data items list. And you can run that for detail. And quite frankly, I'd run it for detail and everything, all data items. It's going to create a fairly extensive report, but you can just scan it on the screen, use your search features on the screen to look for things, for instance, the tax deferred entry, and you'll see on that entry on the report, it's going to show you things or individual deductions that are accumulating into that category. So if you have any questions about what are my earnings items and what are their taxability, or which voluntary deductions are pre-tax, feel free to run this report and it will give you the information that you're looking for. Okay. Now, once you have that information and you've balanced out to your numbers, if you have some discrepancies, what do you do about that? Well, one, can you find the discrepancies? The way to do that is certainly through user-defined reports that we would be able to assist you with. They allow you to really come down to an individual basis and do some proofing. So that's one way we search for problem items. The other area that you might suspect are adjustments. Throughout the calendar year, if you're entering adjustments into the payroll, there's a good possibility that might be an area to double check. You know, if your basis amounts isn't computing properly, perhaps an adjustment was made through the year that properly maybe refunded a deduction, but maybe we didn't handle the basis amounts properly. Okay. Now, once those numbers are resolved and you have some adjustments to make, what we end up doing is we either enter the adjustments directly to the history file, or if somebody is being paid an additional time within the calendar year, we could be using the one-time payroll deduction program within the net pay folder to resolve any issues that we're having. Okay. Now, from here, the next thing that you can do that would be advantageous ahead of time to actually producing the W-2s is to go into the federal parameter file under the W-2 screen. And what we're looking for there is really, the first screen is going to show you some basic demographic data like who you are, your tax ID number, and things of that nature. For the most part, that's going to remain static from year to year, but it's worth looking at to see if there's any additional changes that need to be made. Also in this screen, what the parameter does is it lists all the various boxes that are available on the W-2 form as well as the W-2 electronic file. And on a client-by-client basis, what you're doing is you're identifying which deductions accumulate into which boxes on the W-2. And again, for the most part, that information stays static from year to year. What you want to do is kind of put up your antenna and say, okay, did we add any new deductions in calendar 2014? You know, for instance, did we have a new 457 plan? Did we have any new 941s? Anything new that has come into the system that we need to account for within this parameter file? Okay, and if so, we need to certainly add that control data into the parameter file, so when it does come time to actually create the W-2s, your numbers are accumulating into the proper boxes on the W-2. Okay. From here, what we want to do is discuss another preliminary function that you can do ahead of time, and that is the W-2 forms themselves. Now, for the most part, the form it's a blank piece of paper. It has horizontal perforations, and there is some legalese terms on the back of the form. But it is the face of the form is blank, and your Fundware software will draw all the blanks and fill in the form. As you can see from this slide, there's a phone number and also a website that if you'd like, you can log into, and these are the recommended forms that will fit the program. Okay, and if you have any questions about that, feel free just to give me a buzz or drop me an email and we can discuss that. Okay, now from here, in terms of year-end with the release of the Blackboard software, is you come to typically the last week of December, and Blackboard is going to be releasing a year-end service pack. And what the year-end service pack contains is any software changes, including the forms themselves, that anything that has changed from calendar 2013 to calendar 2014. And what we want to do is download that service pack and get it installed on your system. This typically happens before you start the actual physical process of going through the W-2s, creating the W-2s themselves. If you happen to experiment with the software ahead of time and you go into the W-2 programs, the system will come up and basically tell you that your current calendar year is not compatible with last year's software 2013. It is at this point just a warning message, but it is very important that we get the correct software in place before we start the actual final W-2 preparation. Okay. The next thing, just in brief passing to note, is this year-end service pack is different from what we call a toolbox in Fundware. The year-end toolbox contains changes to things like tax rates and perhaps ceilings on various deductions. This is a separate download, and that is, again, something that just keep in the back of your mind that should be downloaded and installed prior to your first payroll of calendar 2015. Okay. And then from there, one final thing in regards to year-end and preparation for the next calendar 25 payroll is there is a function in Fundware called roll balances forward. And what that does is it sets up the system so that you can start entering a 2015 payroll, and also it will roll balances forward, meaning deductions such as, or date items, I should call them. If you have tracking vacation or sick or any of those types of benefits that roll forward from year to year, the balances roll, that's what it's bringing forward at that point in time. Okay. What this slide illustrates here is probably what we're all aware of is the deadlines for creating the W-2s. Is the paper copies need to be out in the employee's hands by the end of January. Okay. For the most part, I think you'll be filing electronically, and your electronic file is due in the end of March. Okay. One personal note on that is I'd like to recommend to clients that don't be overly anxious to file the electronic file too soon. You know, I don't mean to wait until the 31st or the last weekend or whatnot, but let the paper copies go out to the employees. If anybody has an issue and they bring it to you and you agree, it's a whole lot easier to make the adjustment in the software and reissue a paper copy W-2. And now, because we haven't filed electronically, when we do create the electronic file, it will pick up the changes, and we're not getting involved with things like W-2Cs for corrections or anything to refile the W-2 electronic file. Okay. Next, these just happens to be a preview of some additional webinars that we have coming up next week. You'll see that we have a year-end seminar for the general ledger and closing your books, and then our IT department has a seminar in terms of the infrastructure and budgeting. Now, in terms of year-end, obviously, as a company, Zobrio offers year-end services. We can offer on-site services. We can offer remote services. And what we do is recommend that you call Matt Kreutzer, and this slide shows you his email address as well as his direct phone line. And what we ask you to do is give Matt a call, and we are currently scheduling training or a year-end assistance to get the W-2s prepared. So if you're interested in that service, give Matt a call. We'll get you scheduled and make sure you're part of the year-end pipeline.